In the last part of this series, part 9, we took a little detour to discuss the Apocrypha. That subject was important because there are so many lies and misconceptions that surround the books that are not a part of the 66 canon in the King James Bible. I encourage the reading of the Apocrypha, and because I'm going to continue to teach from the Apocrypha, I wanted to make sure that I clarified why I do so there is no confusion. But now that that's covered, it is important that we continue on and discuss an important biblical figure, a major foundation of Yasharel, the man to whom all the promises were made. This man is, of course, Abraham. Abraham is a major figure for me. He is one of my major examples. When I was turning to Yah and looking for an example of the type of man I was trying to be, he was one of those first ones that really spoke to me. Because in a world of wickedness, he knew that it was the Creator who should be worshipped, even if the rest of the world did opposite. And so he stood for Yahuwah, even though the rest of the world stood for rebellion against Yahuwah. And that took bravery and love of our Father. He is truly an example. And so as we go through his story and understand how he became introduced to Yahuwah, and then later on a covenant was made between Yahuwah and Abraham, though his role was huge, his example was very simple to follow. It's simple as this. What Yahuwah said, he did. And it's that simple example that sticks with me. And this relationship between Abraham and Yahuwah, it was strong. And Yahuwah built up Abraham as a strong man of influence on the earth. Now, where the confusion comes in is in the beginnings of Abraham, because the book of Genesis does not go in depth about the beginnings of Abraham. You know, one thing that people like to say is that Abraham was accepted by Yah before he was ever even given the Torah. So to them, it justifies the thought of lawlessness that should not be there. So what I want to do is start this discussion going in depth of our forefather Abraham, so you can understand his beginning. In our modern times, when we deal with a major character, they love doing origin stories. I think that dealing with Abraham, being that he is a major figure of our faith, being that he is the one who received all the promises, the covenant was made with him, I think it's only right that he gets his own origin story. And so that's where we're going to start this discussion with. As we really dig into this series now and go into understanding the Bible, you must understand our forefather Abraham. So we will now start the origin story of Abraham. Let's begin. Okay, so we're going to start this story a little bit before the period we ended in part 6. We have to go back a little bit. We must start during King Nimrod's reign. So this would be at the end of part 5. This is right before the building of the Tower of Babel. So we're going to go back to Jasher chapter 7. And all the earth was of one tongue and words of union. But Nimrod did not go in the ways of Yahuwah, and he was more wicked than all the men that were before him from the days of the flood until those days. And he made Elohim of wood and stone, and he bowed down to them, and he rebelled against Yahuwah, and taught all his subjects and the people of the earth his wicked ways. And Mardon, his son, was more wicked than his father. And everyone that heard of the acts of Mardon, the son of Nimrod, would say concerning him, from the wicked goes forth wickedness. Therefore it became a proverb in the whole earth, saying, from the wicked goes forth wickedness. And it was current in the words of men from that time to this. And Terah, the son of Nachor, prince of Nimrod's host, was in those days very great in the sight of the king and his subjects. And the king and princes loved him, and they elevated him very high. And Terah took a woman, and her name was Amithalo, the daughter of Kenebo. And the woman of Terah conceived and bore him a son in those days. Terah was 70 years old when he begat him, and Terah called the name of his son that was born to him Abram, because the king had raised him in those days, and dignified him above all his princes that were with him. That's Jasher chapter 7, verses 46 through 51. Let's keep reading to Jasher chapter 8. And it was in the night that Abram was born, that all the servants of Terah, and all the wise men of Nimrod, and his conjurers came and ate and drank in the house of Terah, and they rejoiced with him on that night. And when all the wise men and conjurers went out of the house of Terah, they lifted up their eyes towards heaven that night to look at the stars, and they saw, and behold, one very large star came from the east, and ran in the heavens, and he swallowed up the 4 stars from the 4 sides of the heavens. And all the wise men of the king and his conjurers were astonished at the sight. And the sages understood this matter, and they knew its import. And they said to each other, "This only betokens the child that has been born to Terah this night, who will grow up and be fruitful and multiply and possess all the earth. He and his children forever, and he and his seed will slay great kings and inherit their lands." And the wise men and conjurers went home that night, and in the morning all these wise men and conjurers rose up early and assembled in an appointed house. Joshua chapter 8, verse 1 through 5. All right. And so then what they did, just skipping over a lot, they went and told Nimrod, and Nimrod told Terah to bring his son. But Terah, he didn't bring Abram, but he brought another child born to his handmaid. Let's keep reading in chapter 8. And Terah hastened, as the thing was urgent from the king. And he took a child from one of his servants, which his handmaid had born to him that day. And Terah brought the child to the king and received value for him. And Yahweh was with Terah in this matter, that Nimrod might not cause Abram's death. And the king took the child from Terah, and with all his might dashed his head to the ground, for he thought it had been Abram. And this was concealed from him from that day. And it was forgotten by the king, as it was the will of providence not to suffer Abram's death. And Terah took Abram his son secretly, together with his mother and nurse, and he concealed them in a cave, and he brought them their provisions monthly. And Yahweh was with Abram in the cave, and he grew up. And Abram was in the cave 10 years, and the king, his princes, soothsayers, and sages thought that the king had killed Abram. Joshua chapter 8, verses 33 through 36. Okay, so this is Abram's beginning, but it gets deeper because Abram goes to live with Noah and Shem. We'll continue on to Joshua chapter 9. And Haran, the son of Terah, Abram's oldest brother, took a woman in those days. Haran was 39 years old when he took her, and the woman of Haran conceived and bore a son, and he called his name Lot. And she conceived again and bore a daughter, and she called her name Milcah. And she again conceived and bore a daughter, and she called her name Sarai. Haran was 42 years old when he begat Sarai, which was in the 10th year of the life of Abram. And in those days, Abram and his mother and nurse went out from the cave, and the king and his subjects had forgotten the affair of Abram. And when Abram came out from the cave, he went to Noah and his son Shem, and he remained with them to learn the instruction of Yahweh and his ways. And no man knew where Abram was. And Abram served Noah and Shem, his son, for a long time. And Abram was in Noah's house 39 years, and he went in the ways of Yahweh until the day of his death, as Noah and his son Shem had taught him. And all the sons of the earth in those days greatly transgressed against Yahweh, and they rebelled against him, and they served other Elohim, and they forgot Yahweh who had created them in the earth. And the inhabitants of the earth made unto themselves at that time every man his Elohim, Elohim of wood and stone, which could neither speak, hear, nor deliver. And the sons of men served them, and they became their Elohim. And the king and all his servants, and Terah with all his household, were then the first of those that served Elohim of wood and stone. And Terah had 12 Elohim of large size, made of wood and stone, after the 12 months of the year. And he served each one monthly, and every month Terah would bring his oblation and drink offering to his Elohim. Thus did Terah all the days. And all that generation were wicked in the sight of Yahweh, and they thus made every man his Elohim, but they forsook Yahweh who created them. There was not a man found in those days in the whole earth who knew Yahweh, for they served each man his own Elohim, except Noah and his household, and all those who were under his counsel knew Yahweh in those days. And Abram, the son of Terah, was waxing great in those days in the house of Noah, and no man knew it, and Yahweh was with him. And Yahweh gave Abram the understanding heart, and he knew all the works of that generation were vain, and that all their Elohim were vain and were of no avail. And Abram saw the sun shining upon the earth, and Abram said unto himself, Surely now this sun that shines upon the earth is Elohim, and him I will serve. And Abram served the sun in that day, and he prayed to him. And when evening came, the sun set as usual. And Abram said with himself, Surely this cannot be Elohim. And Abram still continued to speak within himself. Who is he who made the heavens and the earth? Who created upon earth? Where is he? And night darkened over him, and he lifted up his eyes toward the west, north, south, and east. And he saw that the sun had vanished from the earth, and the day became dark. And Abram saw the stars and moon before him, and he said, "Surely this is the Elohim who created the whole earth, as well as man, and behold, these his servants are Elohim around him." And Abram served the moon and prayed to it all that night. And in the morning, when it was light, and the sun shone upon the earth as usual, Abram saw all the things that Yahweh Elohim had made upon earth. And Abram said unto himself, "Surely these are not Elohim that had made earth and all mankind, but these are the servants of Elohim." And Abram remained in the house of Noah, and there knew Yahweh and his ways, and he served Yahweh all the days of his life. And all that generation forgot Yahweh, and served other Elohim of wood and stone, and rebelled all their days. Jasher chapter 9, verses 1 through 19. So Abraham was in the house of Noah and Shem, and he was trying to understand where Yahweh was. The rest of the world were gathering their idols, making these false images, and worshiping wood and stone. But Abraham, he was trying to find who the creator of the earth was. So in this part, you see him trying to figure it out, but he recognized that the sun couldn't be Yahweh, and nor could the moon be. These are all his servants. They all serve under the creator. So as he lived in the house of Noah, he began to learn about Yahweh. And later on, you will see when he finally gets introduced to Yahweh. But that is the beginning. Abraham was learning of Yahweh in the house of Noah and Shem. But the rest of the world, what were they doing? Well, as we went over in part 6, this is when they built the Tower of Babel. But understand, this is still before Semiramis and the beginning of paganism, because Nimrod is still alive and he's still reigning. So we'll continue on right at the end of the Tower of Babel. Jasher chapter 11 says, "And Nimrod, son of Cush, was still in the land of Shinar, and he reigned over it and dwelt there, and he built cities in the land of Shinar. And these are the names of the 4 cities which he built. And he called their names after the occurrences that happened to them in the building of the tower. And he called the first Babel, saying, because Yahweh there confounded the language of the whole earth. And the name of the second he called Erech, because from there Elohim dispersed them. And the third he called Akkad, saying there was a great battle at that place. And the fourth he called Calneh, because his princes and mighty men were consumed there, and they vexed Yahweh. They rebelled and transgressed against him. And when Nimrod had built these cities in the land of Shinar, he placed in them the remainder of his people, his princes and his mighty men that were left in his kingdom." Jasher chapter 11, verses 1 through 5. And so Nimrod reigned securely, and it was at this time that Abram came home. One of the things that people love to say in their justification of lawlessness is that Abraham didn't keep the Torah and he was found right in the sight of Yahweh. This misunderstanding is had because of the suppression of the Apocrypha. Abraham went back and lived with Noah and Shem, and he learned about Yahweh from them. It says he learned the instruction of Yahweh and his ways. And so Abraham was brought up away from the rebellion at Babel. And if you understand what happens later with Abraham, you can understand how big of a deal that was. So understand, while Nimrod was starting the first world order, we have Abraham learning about Yahweh and learning from Noah and Shem what Yahweh desired. The rest of the world was in rebellion, but Yah preserved one man and let him hide amongst Noah and Shem, and he preserved him until he was ready to use him. Even Abraham's father was a part of the rebellion, but Abraham was preserved. And so I want you to hold that example, because just because your family is in rebellion, that doesn't mean that Yahweh is not personally calling you and preserving you. It's what he does. But you have to make the choice to serve him as he is doing this. Let's continue on in understanding Abraham. At that time died Nachor, son of Serug, in the 49th year of the life of Abram, son of Terah. And in the 50th year of the life of Abram, son of Terah, Abram came forth from the house of Noah and went to his father's house. And Abram knew Yahweh, and he went in his ways and instructions. And Yahweh Elohiu was with him. And Terah, his father, was in those days still captain of the host of King Nimrod, and he still followed strange Elohim. And Abram came to his father's house and saw 12 Elohim standing there in their temples. And the anger of Abram was kindled when he saw these images in his father's house. And Abram said, as Yahweh lived, these images shall not remain in my father's house. so shall Yahuwah, who created me, do unto me, if in 3 days' time I do not break them all. And Abram went from them, and his anger burned within him. And Abram hastened and went from the chamber to his father's outer court, and he found his father sitting in the court, and all his servants with him. And Abram came and sat before him. And Abram asked his father, saying, Father, tell me, where is Elohim who created heaven and earth, and all the sons of men upon the earth, and who created you and me? And Terah answered his son Abram and said, Behold, those who created us are all with us in the house. And Abram said to his father, My Adonai, show them to me, I pray you. And Terah brought Abram into the chamber of the inner court. And Abram saw, and behold, the whole room was full of Elohim of wood and stone, 12 great images, and others less than they, without number. And Terah said to his son, Behold, these are they which made all you see upon earth, and which created me and you and all mankind. And Terah bowed down to his Elohim, and he then went away from them. And Abram, his son, went away with him. And when Abram had gone from them, he went to his mother and sat before her. And he said to his mother, Behold, my father has shown me those who made heaven and earth, and all the sons of men. Now, therefore, hasten and fetch a kid from the flock, and make of it savory meat, that I may bring it to my father's Elohim as an offering for them to eat. Perhaps I may thereby become acceptable to them. And his mother did so, and she fetched a kid, and made a savory meat thereof, and brought it to Abram. And Abram took the savory meat from his mother, and brought it before his father's Elohim, and he drew nigh to them that they might eat. And Terah his father did not know of it. And Abram saw on the day when he was sitting amongst them that they had no voice, no hearing, no motion, and not one of them could stretch forth his hand to eat. And Abram mocked them and said, Surely the savory meat that I prepared has not pleased them, or perhaps it was too little for them, and for that reason they would not eat. Therefore tomorrow I will prepare fresh savory meat, better and more plentiful than this, in order that I may see the result. And it was on the next day that Abram directed his mother concerning the savory meat. And his mother arose and fetched 3 fine kids from the flock, and she made of them some excellent savory meat, such as her son was fond of, and she gave it to her son Abram. And Terah his father did not know of it. And Abram took the savory meat from his mother, and brought it before his father's Elohim into the chamber. And he came nigh unto them that they might eat. And he placed it before them. And Abram sat before them all day, thinking perhaps they might eat. And Abram viewed them, and behold, they had neither voice nor hearing, nor did one of them stretch forth his hand to the meat to eat. And in the evening of that day, in that house, Abram was clothed with the Ruach Elohim. And he called out and said, Woe unto my father and this wicked generation, whose hearts are all inclined to vanity, who serve these idols of wood and stone, which can neither eat, smell, hear, nor speak, who have mouths without speech, eyes without sight, ears without hearing, hands without feeling, and legs which cannot move. Like them are those that made them, that trust in them. And when Abram saw all these things, his anger was kindled against his father. And he hastened and took a hatchet in his hand and came unto the chamber of the Elohim, and he broke all his father's Elohim. And when he had done breaking the images, he placed the hatchet in the hand of the great Elohim, which was there before them, and he went out. And Terah his father came home, for he had heard at the door the sound of a striking of the hatchet. So Terah came into the house to know what this was about. And Terah, having heard the noise of the hatchet in the room of the images, ran to the room to the images, and he met Abram going out. And Terah entered the room and found all the idols fallen down and broken, and the hatchet in the hand of the largest, which was not broken. And the savory meat which Abram his son had made was still before them. And when Terah saw this, his anger was greatly kindled, and he hastened and went from the room to Abram. And he found Abram his son still sitting in the house. And he said to him, What is this work you have done to my Elohim? And Abram answered Terah his father, and he said, Not so, my Adonai, for I brought savory meat before them. And when I came nigh to them with the meat that they might eat, they all at once stretched forth their hands to eat before the great one had put forth his hand to eat. And the large one saw their works that they did before him, and his anger was violently kindled against them. And he went and took the hatchet that was in the house, and came to them, and broke them all. And behold, the hatchet is yet in his hand, as you see. And Terah's anger was kindled against his son Abram when he spoke this. And Terah said to Abram his son in his anger, What is this tale that you have told? You speak lies to me? Is there in these Elohim Ruach, soul, or power to do all you have told me? Are they not wood and stone? And have I not myself made them? And can you speak such lies, saying that the large Elohim that was with them smote them? It is you that did place the hatchet in his hand, and then say he smote them all. And Abram answered his father and said to him, and how can you then serve these idols in whom there is no power to do anything? Can those idols in which you trust deliver you? Can they hear your prayers when you call upon them? Can they deliver you from the hands of your enemies? Or will they fight your battles for you against your enemies, that you should serve wood and stone, which can neither speak nor hear? And now surely it is not good for you, nor the sons of men that are connected with you, to do these things. Are you so silly, so foolish, or so short of understanding that you will serve wood and stone and do after this manner? And forget Yahweh Elohim, who made heaven and earth, who created you in the earth, and thereby bring a great evil upon your souls in this matter by serving stone and wood? Did not our fathers in days of old sin in this matter, and Yahweh Elohim of the universe brought the waters of the flood upon them and destroyed the whole earth? How can you continue to do this and serve Elohim of wood and stone, who cannot hear or speak or deliver you from oppression, thereby bringing down the anger of Elohim of the universe upon you? Now therefore, my father, refrain from this, and bring not evil upon your soul and the souls of your household. And Abram hastened and sprang from before his father, and took the hatchet from his father's largest idol, with which Abram broke it, and ran away. And Terah, seeing all that Abram had done, hastened to go from his house, and he went to the king, and he came before Nimrod and stood before him, and he bowed down to the king, and the king said, what do you want? That's Jasher chapter 11, verses 12 through 50. Abraham didn't have time for it. But either way, Terah went to Nimrod and tried to have Abraham killed. But he snitched on himself that he switched a child in the beginning, but he blamed it on his brother. And so it said, and Terah answered the king, because my tender feelings were excited for my son at that time, and I took a son of my handmaid, and I brought him to the king. And the king said, who advised you to this? Tell me, do not hide aught from me, then you shall not die. And Terah was greatly terrified in the king's presence. And he said to the king, it was Haran, my eldest son, who advised me to this. And Haran was in those days that Abram was born, 32 years old. But Haran did not advise his father to anything. For Terah said this to the king in order to deliver his soul from the king, for he feared greatly. And the king said to Terah, Haran, your son, who advised you to this, shall die through fire with Abram. For the sentence of death is upon him for having rebelled against the king's desire in doing this thing. And Haran at that time felt inclined to follow the ways of Abram, but he kept it within himself. And Haran said in his heart, behold now, the king has seized Abram on account of these things which Abram did. And it shall come to pass that if Abram prevail over the king, I will follow him. But if the king prevails, I will go after the king. And when Terah had spoken this to the king concerning Haran his son, the king ordered Haran to be seized with Abram. And they brought them both, Abram and Haran his brother, to cast them into the fire. And all the inhabitants of the land, and the king's servants, and the princes, and all the women and little ones were there, standing that day over them. And the king's servants took Abram his brother, and they stripped them of all their clothes, excepting their lower garments which were upon them. And they bound their hands and feet with linen cords. And the servants of the king lifted them up and cast them both into the furnace. And Yahweh loved Abram, and he had compassion over him. And Yahweh came down and delivered Abram from the fire, and he was not burned. But all the cords which they bound him were burned, while Abram remained and walked about in the fire. And Haran died when they had cast him into the fire, and he was burned to ashes, for his heart was not perfect with Yahweh. And those men who cast him into the fire, the flame of the fire spread over them, and they were burned, and 12 men of them died. And Abram walked in the midst of the fire 3 days and 3 nights, and all the servants of the king saw him walking in the fire. And they came and told the king, saying, behold, we have seen Abram walking about in the midst of the fire, and even the lower garments which are upon him are not burned, but the cord with which he was bound is burned. And when the king heard of their words, his heart fainted, and he would not believe them. So he sent other faithful princes to see this matter. And they went and saw it and told it to the king. And the king rose to go and see it. And he saw Abram walking to and fro in the midst of the fire. And he saw Haran's body burned. And the king wondered greatly. And the king ordered Abram to be taken out from the fire. And the servants approached to take him out, and they could not, for the fire was round about, and the flame ascending toward them from the furnace. And the king's servants fled from it. And the king rebuked them, saying, "Make haste and bring Abram out of the fire, that ye shall not die." And the servants of the king again approached to bring Abram out, and the flames came upon them and burned their faces, so that 8 of them died. And when the king saw that his servants could not approach the fire lest they should be burned, the king called to Abram, "O servant of the Elohim who is in heaven, go forth from amidst the fire and come hither before me." And Abraham hearkened to the voice of the king, and he went forth from the fire and came and stood before the king. And when Abram came out, the king and all his servants saw Abram coming before the king, with his lower garments upon him, for they were not burned, but the cord with which he was bound was burned. And the king said to Abram, "How is it that you were not burned in the fire?" And Abram said to the king, "The Elohim of heaven and earth, in whom I trust, and who has all in his power, he delivered me from the fire into which you did cast me." And Haran, the brother of Abram, was burned to ashes, and they sought for his body, and they found it consumed. And Haran was 82 years old when he died in the fire of Kasdim. And the king, princes, and inhabitants of the land, seeing that Abram was delivered from fire, they came and bowed to Abram. And Abram said to them, "Do not bow down to me, but bow down to the Elohim of the world who made you, and serve him, and go in his ways, for it is he who delivered me out of this fire. And it is he who created the souls, Eruakoth, of all men, and formed man in his mother's womb, and brought him forth into the world. And it is he who will deliver those who trust in him from all pain." And this thing seemed very wonderful in the eyes of the king and princes, that Abram was saved from the fire, and that Haran was burned. And the king gave Abram many presents, and he gave him his 2 head servants from the king's house. The name of one was Oni, and the name of the other was Eliezer. And all the kings, princes, and servants gave Abram many gifts of silver and gold and pearl. And the king and his princes sent him away, and he went in peace. And Abram went forth from the king in peace. And many of the king's servants followed him. About 300 men joined him. And Abram returned on that day and went to his father's house, he and the men that followed him. And Abram served Yahuwah Elohayu all the days of his life. And he walked in his ways and followed his Torah. And from that day forward, Abram inclined the hearts of the sons of men to serve Yahuwah. And at that time, Nachor and Abram took unto themselves women, the daughters of their brother Haran. The woman of Nachor was Milcah, and the name of Abram's woman was Sarai. And Sarai, the woman of Abram, was barren. She had no offspring in those days. Joshua chapter 12, verses 1 through 44. And this is the origin of Abraham. We will stop here because what happens after is extremely important, and I don't want to rush. Again, this is the origin story of Abraham. Right now, he is still Abram, but I hope you're understanding him more and understanding the difference between the righteous and the wicked. The wicked are numerous and plenty, but the righteous are few in number, and it's what Yahuwah wants. He doesn't care about the masses of people living in religion and rebellion. He wants those who love him, and Abraham is a great example of this. When the whole world rejected Yahuwah and did not care about him, one man stood against the whole world empire and said, "It is Yahuwah who we serve, and Yahuwah that you must serve." And because of the power of Yahuwah, Yahuwah saved him, and Abraham became known in the land. So I'm going to stop here in this origin story because I think you understand the beginning of Abraham more than most right now. Now we must go to the promises and understand the promises Yahuwah made to Abraham. Promises that we who are alive today, who are redeemed through the blood of Yahusha, are the inheritors of, and what we're waiting to inherit as well. So we must go to this highly important understanding next. So please, go to part 11 of this playlist and continue to grow in knowledge and truth. Live your life in the truth and stay out of the lies, because the kingdom of Yahuwah is truly at hand. Be ready for it and be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please make sure to like it and share it with others. Please share this with any of your family and friends that say they're trying to wake up and they want to understand the Bible. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I'll be uploading every Friday, Sunday, and Tuesday. Also, please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram to find out when these videos are posted. As always, I would like to give a special thank you to those who have donated and who contribute to this ministry. Thank you for your support. Your contribution and support are a huge blessing to this ministry, and I thank you for your obedience to Yahweh's call on your heart. This work would not be able to be done without you, so I'm very grateful for you. You know who you are. Be blessed always. Okay, thanks again for watching, everyone. I love you all.